The cafeteria of Galactic Academy Station Zenith. 7 was never quiet. Hundreds of alien students filled the massive hall, each species bringing their own sounds and colors to the chaos. The Crethians clicked their mandibles while they ate. The Tellurians hummed in harmony with each other. The Voraxians spoke in their whistling language that sounded like wind through caves. It was loud, colorful, and overwhelming. In the corner by the observation window, one student sat completely alone. Vera Lynn stared at her tray of nutrient paste without touching it. The gray substance was designed to feed any biology in the galaxy, but it tasted like nothing. She didn't mind. She wasn't hungry anyway. Her luminescent blue skin caught the starlight from the window, making her glow softly in the dimmer corner she had chosen. Her crystalline hair shifted with each small movement of her head, creating tiny rainbows on the metal table. She looked beautiful. She looked different. And that was a problem. Vera Lynn was Zalnari, a species that most of the galaxy feared. Her people had only recently joined the Galactic Council, and the rumors about them spread faster than truth ever could. People said the Zalnari could read minds. They said Zalnari could control thoughts and steal memories. They said her kind were dangerous manipulators who couldn't be trusted. None of it was true, but Vera Lynn had learned that truth didn't matter when people were afraid. For 3 weeks now, she had sat alone at this table. For 3 weeks, other students had avoided her like she carried some invisible disease. When she walked down the corridors, conversation stopped. When she entered a classroom, the seats beside her stayed empty. The Crethian students whispered warnings to each other in their clicking language, always watching her from the corners of their compound eyes. The Voraxian diplomatic students just stared at her with their 3 sets of eyes, cold and calculating. But the isolation wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the noise. Every living being had emotions, and Vera Lynn could sense them all. That was what her people really were, empaths, not mind readers. She couldn't hear thoughts, but she felt emotions like waves crashing against her mind. In a cafeteria full of hundreds of students, it was like standing in the middle of a hurricane. Fear stabbed at her from the Crethians in sharp, painful bursts. Curiosity pressed against her from the Tellurians in uncomfortable waves. Disgust, suspicion, contempt, all of it crashed over her constantly, relentlessly, exhaustingly. This was why the Zalnari had stayed away from other species for so long. Most minds were too loud. Most emotions were too wild and uncontrolled. But Vera Lynn had volunteered to come to this academy anyway. Someone from her world had to try. Someone had to prove that the Zalnari could live alongside other species, could contribute to the galaxy, could belong somewhere beyond their own planet. She was beginning to think she had made a terrible mistake. Vera Lynn picked up her spoon and moved the nutrient paste around on her tray, pretending to eat. Around her, groups of students laughed and talked. A Tellurian study group harmonized their voices while reviewing notes. A pair of human students argued cheerfully about some Earth sport she didn't understand. A Crethian juggled 3 data pads with his multiple arms, showing off to his friends. Everyone had someone. Everyone belonged somewhere. Everyone except her. She set down her spoon and looked out the observation window. Instead, space stretched endlessly beyond the station. Stars scattered like diamonds on black cloth. Out there, somewhere impossibly far away, was Zalnayar, her home, her family, her people who understood what it was like to feel everything all the time. A tear formed at the corner of her eye, crystallizing immediately into a tiny blue gem. It was how her people cried. Their tears became small crystals that fell with a soft tinkling sound. She caught it quickly before it could fall, closing it in her fist. She couldn't let anyone see her cry. It would just give them one more reason to think she was strange. Is this seat taken? The voice cut through her thoughts. But it wasn't the words that made her look up. It was what came with them. The emotional signature was completely different from everything else in the cafeteria. It was warm, like sunlight on her skin. Curious, but in a gentle way. And surprisingly, wonderfully quiet, like a soft breeze instead of a roaring storm. Vera Lynn raised her head and saw a human standing beside her table. He had dark hair that fell slightly over his eyes and a smile that seemed genuine, not forced or afraid. He held a tray of food in his hands and looked at her with simple, open friendliness. Around the cafeteria, conversations began to stop. Students turned to watch, waiting to see what would happen. Vera Lynn found her voice, though it came out rough from lack of use. "No, it's not taken." The human sat down across from her, without any hesitation, setting his tray on the table. "I'm Jaiwin," he said, holding out his hand in that strange human greeting she had read about. "From Earth." She stared at his hand, unsure what to do. After a moment, she carefully touched her cool crystalline fingers to his warm palm. The contact sent a ripple of his emotions through her, genuine interest, kindness, and absolutely no fear. It was the most peaceful thing she had felt in 3 weeks. "Vera Lynn," she said softly. "Cool name," Jaiwin replied, pulling back his hand. He picked up something from his tray, a triangular piece of food covered in red sauce and melted yellow cheese. He took a bite, chewed thoughtfully, then looked directly at her with those curious human eyes. The entire cafeteria seemed to be holding its breath, watching this impossible moment. Jaiwin swallowed his bite and grinned. "So, Vera Lynn, I've got an important question for you." She leaned forward slightly, drawn by the warmth of his emotions. "Yes." He gestured to the food in his hand. "Do you like pizza?" Vera Lynn blinked, her crystalline hair tinkling softly with the movement. Pizza? She had never heard of it. Around them, students stared in disbelief. They were clearly waiting for her to do something terrible, to manipulate this naive human who dared to approach the dangerous Zalnari. But Vera Lynn just felt confused. And for the first time in 3 long, lonely weeks, she felt something else too. "Hope. I don't know what that is," she admitted honestly. Jaiwin's grin grew wider. "Then you're in for a treat." "Well, maybe. The synthesized version is pretty bad. But let me tell you about the real thing back on Earth." And just like that, as stars wheeled past the observation window and 100 species watched in shock, a human began explaining Earth food to the loneliest student in the academy. Neither of them knew it yet, but everything was about to change. It started with one simple question about pizza. Sometimes, that's all it takes. The next day, Jaiwin appeared at their corner table with something new on his tray. Vera Lynn had arrived early as always, but this time she wasn't dreading lunch. For the first time in weeks, she actually looked forward to it. "Okay, so today I tried to make the synthesizer create dumplings," Jaiwin announced, sitting down across from her. He poked at the small white lumps on his plate with obvious disappointment. "They look sad. Real dumplings are works of art. My mom makes them every New Year, and each one is perfect." Vera Lynn tilted her head, studying the food. "They look adequate to me." "That's because you've never had the real thing," Jaiwin laughed. He cut one open with his fork, and steam rose from inside. "See, real dumplings have this thin, delicate skin. And inside there's meat and vegetables all mixed with these amazing spices. When you bite into one, the juice runs down your chin, and you don't even care because it tastes so good." As he spoke, Vera Lynn felt his emotions shift and brighten. Warmth spread from him like sunlight, tinged with happiness and nostalgia. It was beautiful, and it didn't hurt at all. "Your feelings change when you talk about home," she observed quietly. "They become warmer, softer." Jaiwin paused with his fork halfway to his mouth. "You can feel that?" "Yes. All Zalnari are empaths. We sense emotions from other beings." She hesitated, then added, "It's why most species avoid us. They think we can control thoughts, but we can't. We only feel what others are already feeling. So right now, you know I'm happy?" "Yes. And you're also a little homesick when you mention your mother." Vera Lynn looked down at her hands. "I'm sorry. I know it's invasive." "Don't be sorry," Jaiwin said firmly. He took a bite of his dumpling and made a face. "Yeah, these are terrible. But anyway, it's not invasive if you're just sensing what's already there, right? I mean, I can see when someone looks sad or angry. You just feel it instead of seeing it." Vera Lynn had never thought of it that way. No one had ever made it sound so normal, so acceptable. Over the following days, Jaiwin brought new Earth foods to try. Rice cakes that were supposed to be chewy but came out rubbery. Noodles that should have been savory, but tasted bland. Sweet pancakes that were almost right, but not quite. This is supposed to be hadiak, he explained one afternoon, holding up a flat, slightly burnt circle. It's a street food. Winter nights in Seoul. You buy one from a vendor and it's hot and sweet and perfect. Inside there's brown sugar and cinnamon and crushed peanuts. He bit into the synthesized version and sighed. This tastes like cardboard with sugar coating. But Vera Lynn didn't care that the food was wrong. She cared about the stories that came with it. Each dish carried memories of Jaiwon's home, his family, his world. And through his emotions, she could almost experience them herself. "Tell me about your grandmother," she asked one day. "The one who makes kimchi." Jaiwon's entire emotional signature brightened like a lamp being turned on. Grandma lives in a small house outside the city. She has this huge garden where she grows all her own vegetables. Every autumn, she makes kimchi in these massive clay pots that are buried halfway in the ground. She says the earth keeps them at the perfect temperature. Vera Lynn felt the love radiating from him as he spoke. It was pure and strong and completely genuine. "She sounds wonderful," Vera Lynn said softly. "She is. She like you, I think." Jaiwon smiled. "She always says the best conversations happen over food. That's why she's always cooking for people." "Is that why you keep bringing me food?" "Because of your grandmother's philosophy." Jaiwon shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe I just didn't like seeing you sit alone." Something warm bloomed in Vera Lynn's chest. It wasn't his emotion, it was her own. Happiness, real and strong. Something she hadn't felt since leaving Zalin AR. "Can I tell you about my world?" she asked suddenly. "I was hoping you would," Jaiwon replied, leaning forward with interest. So Vera Lynn began to share. She told him about the crystal gardens of Zalin AR, where structures grew from the ground like plants, singing softly when the wind touched them. She explained how her people could shape crystal with their thoughts, creating art that was both visual and emotional. "We have something called harmonic meditation," she said. "Groups of Zalnari will sit together and synchronize their emotions. We create patterns of feeling, joy flowing into peace, peace flowing into contentment. It's like music, but made of emotion instead of sound." "That sounds beautiful," Jaiwon said, and she felt that he truly meant it. "Most species think it sounds like mind control," Vera Lynn replied bitterly. "Most species are idiots," Jaiwon said bluntly. "No offense to the galaxy." Vera Lynn laughed, actually laughed. The sound came out like crystal chimes, clear and bright. Other students turned to look, but for once, she didn't care. As the week progressed, their conversations deepened. Vera Lynn explained why the Zalnari had isolated themselves for so long. Other species have such strong emotions, and they broadcast them constantly. Fear, anger, aggression, it's overwhelming. Like standing in a room where everyone is screaming at once. "But I'm not screaming?" Jaiwon asked. "No, you're barely whispering. I don't understand why. Humans are supposed to be very emotional creatures." Jaiwon thought about this. "Maybe it's because I've learned to be calm. My grandma taught me meditation when I was little. She said a peaceful mind is a strong mind." "That's very similar to Zalnari philosophy," Vera Lynn said, surprised. "Maybe our species aren't so different after all." One afternoon, as they sat together studying, Jaiwon looked up from his datapad. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Yes," Vera Lynn said, though she felt a small flutter of nervousness. "Why did you come here? To the academy, I mean. If other species are so overwhelming, why put yourself through this?" Vera Lynn was quiet for a long moment. "Because someone had to try. The Zalnari have been alone for too long. We have knowledge and abilities that could help the galaxy, but we've been too afraid to share them. I volunteered to prove that we could integrate with other species." She looked down at her hands. "But I'm failing. Everyone still fears me. Except you." "You're not failing," Jaiwon said firmly. "You're here. You're trying. That takes courage." "I'm terrified every single day," Vera Lynn admitted. "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing the right thing even when you're afraid." Jaiwon reached across the table and gently touched her hand. "And you're not alone anymore. You have me. I'm your friend, Vera Lynn. The word friend resonated through her empathic senses, wrapped in genuine warmth and loyalty. Vera Lynn felt tears forming at the corners of her eyes, crystallizing into tiny blue gems. But this time, she didn't hide them. Friend, she repeated, her voice thick with emotion. Yes, I would like that very much. Across the cafeteria, students still watched them with suspicion and confusion. But Vera Lynn found that she didn't care anymore. For the first time since arriving at the academy, she had found something the noise couldn't drown out. She had found a friend. And somehow, that made everything else bearable. Professor Crixenale stood at the front of the assembly hall, his large Crethean body casting a shadow over the first 3 rows of students. His mandibles clicked together as he spoke, a sound that always made the younger students nervous. The semester project begins today, he announced, his voice echoing through the hall. You will form teams of 4 students. Each team must include at least 3 different species. Your task is to create a theoretical bridge between incompatible technology systems. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This was a project that determined half their final grade. Choose your partners wisely, Professor Crixenale continued. You have until tomorrow to form your teams. Those without teams will be assigned randomly. The assembly ended, and students immediately began clustering together. By lunchtime, the cafeteria had transformed into a strategic battlefield. Crethean students gathered in one corner, their clicking language rapid with negotiation. Tellurian groups hummed together, discussing options. Varaxian diplomatic students moved between tables, carefully selecting allies. Vera Lynn sat at her usual corner table, watching the chaos. She already knew what would happen. No one would choose her. No one ever did. Looks like it's us, Jaiwin said cheerfully, dropping into the seat across from her. We need 2 more. Vera Lynn felt gratitude wash through her, but also guilt. Jaiwin, you should join another team. One that actually has a chance of finding 4 members. Why would I do that? You're the smartest person I know. We're going to ace this project. He pulled out his datapad and started taking notes. Okay, so we need students from 2 more species. Who do you think would be good? But no one came to their table. Students walked past, deliberately avoiding eye contact. A group of human students glanced their way, but quickly looked away when they saw Vera Lynn. An hour passed. Then 2. The cafeteria began to empty as teams formed and left to start planning. Still, no one approached them. A human girl named Hannah finally walked over, but she didn't sit down. She stood beside Jaiwin with her arms crossed, looking uncomfortable. Jaiwin, can we talk? She asked. Privately? Jaiwin glanced at Vera Lynn, then back at Hannah. Anything you need to say, you can say in front of my friend. Hannah sighed. Fine. Earth's diplomatic corps sent a message to all human students. They're concerned about your association with the Zalnari. They think it could harm our planet's application to the Galactic Council. Vera Lynn felt her heart sink. She had known this would happen eventually. She started to stand. Jaiwin, you should listen to her. I don't want to cause problems for Earth. Sit down, Jaiwin said gently but firmly. Then he looked at Hannah. Tell the diplomatic corps that I'm making friends, not political alliances. There's a difference. Jaiwin, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. Vera Lynn is my friend. We're partners for this project. That's not changing. His voice was calm but absolute. Hannah shook her head in frustration. You're making a mistake. When Earth's application gets rejected, remember this conversation. She walked away, leaving them alone again. Vera Lynn stared at the table. You should have listened to her. Your whole planet's future might depend on making the right political connections. My planet's future should depend on being decent people, not playing politics, Jaiwin replied. He reached across the table and touched her hand. Hey, look at me. She raised her eyes to meet his. We're going to do this as a 2-person team if we have to. Professor Crixenale said 4 students, but he didn't say it was mandatory. We'll work twice as hard and create something twice as good. And they did. For the next 2 weeks, Jaiwin and Vera Lynn worked together every day. They combined Zalnari harmonic frequency calculations with human adaptive algorithms. Verilin's ability to sense energy patterns helped him understand how different technologies could communicate. Jaiwin's creative problem-solving found solutions no one else would consider. Their design was elegant and innovative. Even Professor Crixon A.L. seemed impressed during their progress check. Interesting approach, he clicked, examining their work. Very interesting indeed. They were on track to have the best project in the class. Verilyn began to feel hopeful again. Maybe they really could succeed despite everything. Then one morning, everything fell apart. Jaiwin arrived at their usual study room to find Verilyn staring at a blank screen, her crystalline tears falling onto the desk with soft tinkling sounds. "What happened?" he asked, rushing to her side. "Our files. All our work. It's gone." Her voice trembled. Someone erased everything. Jaiwin grabbed the terminal and started checking the logs. His face went pale. This wasn't an accident. Someone deliberately wiped our project data. This is sabotage. Within an hour, the news had spread through the academy. Students whispered in corridors. By afternoon, a crowd had gathered outside Professor Crixonale's office. A Crethean student named Cross stood at the center of the crowd, his mandibles clicking with false concern. I hate to say it, but this is typical Zalnari behavior. They manipulate others, then destroy the evidence when things don't go their way. The human is probably under her influence and doesn't even know it. Other students nodded. It made sense to them. The Zalnari were mind controllers, weren't they? This was exactly the kind of thing they would do. Verilyn stood frozen, feeling the waves of suspicion and anger from everyone around her. Even some of the students who had started to accept her now looked at her with doubt. She didn't do this, Jaiwin said loudly, stepping forward. Verilyn would never sabotage our own project. Of course you'd say that. Cross clicked. You're clearly under her influence. It's sad, really. Humans are supposed to be smarter than this. I'm not under anyone's influence. Jaiwin shot back. And I'm going to prove Verilyn is innocent. Cross laughed, a strange chittering sound. How? The evidence is gone. Face it, human. You trusted the wrong person. Professor Crixonale emerged from his office, mandibles clicking sharply for silence. Enough. I will investigate this matter. Until then, Jaiwin and Verilyn, you have 3 days to recreate your project or you both fail. The crowd dispersed, leaving Jaiwin and Verilyn alone in the corridor. I didn't do this, Verilyn whispered. I swear to you I didn't. I know you didn't, Jaiwin interrupted, and I'm going to prove it. He spent the next 2 days barely sleeping. While Verilyn tried to recreate their work from memory, Jaiwin dug through security footage and access logs. He cross-referenced timestamps, tracked terminal usage, analyzed every piece of data he could find. On the 3rd day, exhausted and running on too much coffee, he found it. Got you, he muttered, staring at a screen. He called an emergency meeting in Professor Crixonale's office. The professor was there, along with Cross and several faculty members. Jaiwin pulled up a security log. At 3 a.m, 2 days ago, someone accessed our project terminal. The user ID was masked, but they made one mistake. He expanded the data. They accessed it from Terminal 47B in the East Wing. That terminal requires a Crethean biometric scan to unlock. Professor Crixonale's mandibles stopped clicking. Continue. Verilyn found Jaiwin alone in the observation deck 3 days after the incident with Cross. He stood at the large window, staring out at the endless stars. His emotional signature felt heavy, weighed down by something she rarely sensed from him, doubt. She approached quietly, her footsteps making soft sounds on the metal floor. Jaiwin. He turned to look at her, and she saw the tiredness in his eyes. He hadn't been sleeping well. I'm leaving the academy, Verilyn said, forcing the words out. I've already sent my withdrawal request to the administration. I'll be gone by the end of the week. What? No. Jaiwin's voice was sharp, firm. You're not leaving. I have to. Look at what's happening to you. Verilyn gestured helplessly. Your own people won't talk to you anymore. Earth's diplomatic corps is angry with you. Other human students avoid you in the hallways. All because of me. I don't care about that. But I care. Vera Lynn's voice cracked. You came to this academy to learn, to represent your planet, to build connections. Instead, you're sitting alone in observation decks because you decided to be friends with the wrong person. Jaiwin was quiet for a moment. Then he shook his head. You're not the wrong person. They're the wrong people for judging you without knowing you. Jaiwin, please. Let me go. It's better for everyone. No. He turned to face her fully, and she felt determination radiating from him like heat from a fire. I have a better idea. Do you trust me? Vera Lynn hesitated. Of course I trust you. But then trust me on this. Give me 2 days. Just 2 more days. If my plan doesn't work, then we'll figure something else out. Deal. She wanted to argue, but the hope in his emotions made her pause. What are you planning? Jaiwin's familiar smile returned. You'll see. It involves pizza. 2 days later, every student at the academy received the same notification on their datapads. Human Culture Night. All species welcome. Guest of honor. Vera Lynn of Zalin AR. Recreation Hall, 1900 hours. Vera Lynn stared at the message in shock. Jaiwin, what did you do? Something my grandmother would do, he replied with a grin. When people don't understand each other, you feed them. Come on, we have a lot to prepare. The recreation hall was transformed. Images of Earth covered the walls. Green mountains, blue oceans, sprawling cities full of light. There were pictures of forests and deserts, of people from different cultures, of festivals and celebrations. In the center of it all, Jaiwin had set up a cooking station with real ingredients he'd somehow acquired from the supply merchants. How did you pay for all this? Vera Lynn asked, looking around in amazement. I have my ways, Jaiwin said mysteriously. Now help me set up these tables. At 7 o'clock, students began to arrive. They came slowly, cautiously, driven by curiosity more than anything else. Tellurians hummed quietly to each other as they entered. A few Voraxians came in, their 3 sets of eyes scanning everything. Even some Crethean students appeared, though they stayed near the door. Human students came too, though they looked uncomfortable. Hannah was among them, her expression uncertain. Jaiwin stood at the cooking station, Flour already dusting his hands and apron. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming. Tonight, I'm going to show you something important about human culture. I'm going to make pizza from scratch. He held up ingredients one by one. Flour, water, yeast, tomatoes, cheese. On Earth, pizza is more than just food. It's something we share with others. When humans want to celebrate, we order pizza. When we want to comfort someone, we bring them pizza. When we want to make friends, we invite them over for pizza. His hands worked as he spoke, kneading dough with practiced motions. Students watched, fascinated despite themselves. Humans spent a long time being afraid of each other. Jaiwin continued. We built walls between our countries. We fought wars over differences in skin color, religion, language. We hurt each other because we were scared of people who weren't like us. He spread sauce over the flattened dough, his movements careful and deliberate. But eventually we learned something important. Fear only works when you keep people at a distance. The moment you sit down with someone, share a meal, listen to their story, they stop being other. They stop being scary. They just become people. He added cheese and toppings, then slid the pizza into a small portable oven he'd brought. We made so many mistakes on Earth, but we figured out that our differences could make us stronger instead of dividing us. We learned that understanding starts with simple things, like sharing food. The smell of baking pizza began to fill the hall. Students shifted, their curiosity growing. While the pizza cooked, Jaiwin told stories. He talked about Korean history, about times when his people were invaded and oppressed, but survived and grew stronger. He talked about human wars and human peace, about the long, difficult journey toward understanding. My grandmother always says that the best way to know someone is to eat with them, Jaiwin said. Because when you share food, you share part of yourself too. The timer beeped. Jaiwin pulled out the pizza, golden and steaming. The smell was incredible, nothing like the synthesized versions. This was real, made with care and skill. He cut it into slices and held up the first piece. Who wants to try? Nobody moved. The hall was silent, except for the soft humming of the Tellurians. Then, slowly, a Crethean student stepped forward. It wasn't one of Cross's friends, but a younger student Vera Lynn had seen in her mathematics class. "I'll try it," the Crethean said, his mandibles clicking nervously. Jaiwan handed him a slice. The student took a careful bite, mandibles working as he tasted it. His eyes widened. This is actually good," he said, surprise clear in his voice. That broke the dam. Students surged forward, each wanting to try this strange human food. Jaiwan served them all, smiling and explaining the ingredients, answering questions about Earth and its cultures. Vera Lynn stood to the side, watching in amazement. Through her empathic senses, she felt the emotions in the room shifting. Suspicion was fading. Curiosity was growing. And something else, the beginnings of understanding. A Tellurian student approached her hesitantly. "Vera Lynn, I wanted to ask, your people's meditation, the harmonic thing, could you show us how it works?" Vera Lynn glanced at Jaiwan, who nodded encouragingly. Yes, I can show you." She moved to an open space. "It's not mind control like people think. It's more like art. We share emotions, but we don't force them on anyone." Several students gathered around her. She demonstrated the breathing technique, the way Zalnari synchronize their emotions to create patterns of feeling. "It's like singing," a Tellurian student said, understanding dawning. "We harmonize our voices. You harmonize your emotions." "Yes, exactly like that," Vera Lynn said, feeling hope bloom in her chest. More students tried it, their clumsy attempts making Vera Lynn laugh, a sound like crystal chimes that made everyone smile. Across the room, a human student named Miho approached Jaiwan quietly. "The diplomatic corps would hear about this, you know? They won't be happy." Jaiwan shrugged, serving another slice of pizza. "Good. Let them hear that Earth makes friends, not just political alliances." 3 months had passed since the Human Culture Night that changed everything at Galactic Academy Station Zenith 7. The morning announcement crackled through every speaker in the station, reaching students in their dorms, classrooms, and common areas. "Attention, all students. The Academy is proud to announce the Cultural Bridge Program, a new requirement for all enrolled students. Beginning next semester, every student must participate in interspecies cultural exchanges. The program model is simple. Shared meals, shared stories, shared understanding." Professor Crixenale's voice continued, his mandibles clicking through the speakers. "The founders of this program are Jaiwan of Earth and Vera Lynn of Zalanar. Please join me in recognizing their contribution to our academy." In the cafeteria, students turned to look at the corner table where Jaiwan and Vera Lynn sat. But it wasn't a corner table anymore. They had moved to a larger table in the center of the room, surrounded by friends from 6 different species. Vera Lynn felt overwhelmed by the announcement. "They named us as founders," she whispered to Jaiwan. "I didn't expect that." "You deserve it," Jaiwan said, taking a bite of his lunch. "This whole thing started because of you." "It started because of you," Vera Lynn corrected. "You were the one who asked if I liked pizza." A Tellurian student across the table hummed with amusement. "You two can argue about who deserves credit later. Right now, we should celebrate." And they did. But the celebration was just the beginning. Within a week, applications from Zalnari students began flooding the Academy's admission office. Where there had been only one Zalnari student, now there would be dozens. The Zalnari Council had watched what happened with Vera Lynn, had seen how she not only survived but thrived, and they decided it was time for more of their people to venture into the wider galaxy. The first new Zalnari student arrived on a Tuesday morning. Her name was Lysarin, and she looked terrified as she stepped off the transport ship. Her blue skin seemed paler than usual, and her crystalline hair trembled with her nervous movements. Vera Lynn was waiting at the docking bay to meet her. "Welcome," Vera Lynn said gently, feeling the waves of anxiety rolling off the younger student. "I know you're scared. I was too when I first arrived." "The emotions here," Lisa Run whispered. There's so many. It's so loud. I know. Come with me. I'll teach you how to manage it. Verilyn led her to a quiet study room where 3 other new Zalnari students were already waiting. They all looked at her with a mixture of hope and fear. The first thing you need to learn is a technique a human taught me, Verilyn began. It's called breathing exercises. Humans use them to calm themselves when they feel overwhelmed. We can adapt them to filter emotional input. She demonstrated the slow, measured breathing pattern Jaiwan had shown her months ago. Breathe in for 4 counts. Hold for 4 counts. Breathe out for 4 counts. As you breathe, imagine a barrier forming around your mind. Not to block emotions completely, but to soften them, like looking at bright light through a curtain. The new students tried it, their breathing synchronizing slowly. Verilyn felt their emotions beginning to settle, the overwhelming noise of the station fading to a manageable level. It works, Lisarin said in wonder. It actually works. There's more I'll teach you, Verilyn promised. Mindfulness meditation, grounding techniques, even some Tellurian humming exercises that help. You won't be alone here. None of you will. Over the following weeks, Verilyn built a support network for the new Zalnari students. She introduced them to her friends from other species, showed them which cafeteria foods were tolerable, and most importantly, taught them that being different didn't mean being isolated. But the changes at the academy went beyond just the Zalnari. The Cultural Bridge program was changing everyone. Students who had never spoken to each other before were now sharing meals and stories. The Crethians taught others about their complex art of crystalline sculpture. The Voraxians shared their mathematical philosophies. The Tellurians led group singing sessions that somehow brought peace to even the most stressed students. And the humans, they brought food, so much food. Jaiwan had started a cooking club where students from Earth taught others how to make dishes from different human cultures. The synthesizers worked overtime, creating ingredients for Korean bibimbap, Italian pasta, Mexican tacos, Indian curry, and dozens of other dishes. Food is a universal language. Jaiwan explained during one session, teaching a group of Crethian students how to make dumplings. It doesn't matter where you're from. Everyone understands the act of sharing a meal. One day, a message arrived at the academy from the Zalnari Council. Verilyn read it in her dorm room with Jaiwan, sitting beside her. They want to establish formal relations with Earth, she said, her voice shaking slightly. They say that humanity's approach to interspecies cooperation is unlike anything they've seen before. They want to learn from us. From us? Jaiwan laughed. Humans are still figuring this stuff out ourselves. But that's exactly why it works, Verilyn said. You don't pretend to have all the answers. You just try to be kind, to understand, to connect. It's simple but powerful. Another message arrived, this time addressed to Earth's diplomatic corps. Jaiwan opened it, and his eyes went wide. Earth has been invited to join the Galactic Council's Cultural Development Committee, he read aloud. They specifically mentioned the work we've done here at the Academy. They say humanity has demonstrated a unique ability to bridge cultural divides. Verilyn felt joy radiating from him, warm and bright. Your planet must be proud. Maybe, Jaiwan said. Or maybe they'll be confused about why we got invited for making pizza instead of showing off our technology. He grinned. Either way, I'll take it. The semester continued, and the changes became permanent fixtures of academy life. The cafeteria was no longer divided by species. Study groups mixed students from different worlds. Even the faculty began adopting the cultural bridge model in their teaching. Professor Crixenale stopped Verilyn in the hallway one day. I owe you an apology, he clicked. When you first arrived, I thought you would fail. I thought your species was too different, too isolated to integrate. I was wrong. You weren't the only one who thought that. Verilyn replied, I thought it too, sometimes. But you persevered, and in doing so, you changed this academy for the better. You should be proud. As he walked away, Verilyn felt a sense of accomplishment she had never experienced before. She had come to this academy to prove that Zalnari could integrate with other species. She had succeeded beyond her wildest expectations. The final week of the semester arrived. The cafeteria was busier than ever. filled with students sharing meals and laughter. Vera Lynn sat at her usual table, no longer in the corner, but right in the middle of everything, surrounded by friends. She noticed a small figure standing alone near the entrance, a Korean student new to the academy, holding an empty tray and looking lost. The young alien's scales shimmered with nervous colors, and her large eyes darted around the crowded room with obvious fear.